welcome to your reading. A big thank you to the subscriber who suggested this topic. Let's go ahead and get into it. We have the Five of Wands, we have the Four of Pentacles, we have Scribe, preserving knowledge and information. We have the Seven of Earth or the Seven of Pentacles. We have the Three of Pentacles, we have the Deer and Oat with healing, and we have the Rooster and Sunflower with communication. So group one, in your past life, you did something with writing, you did something with communication, and you were also someone who succeeded in a field, in an area where there was a lot of competition. So a lot of people wanted your spot. A lot of people wanted to do what you were achieving. And you were also self-made. You came from really humble beginnings and you worked your way, I'm hearing painstakingly, to the top. So you didn't come from privilege, you didn't have connections or opportunities or even the education. Sorry if you hear a lot of noise, Gracie's playing downstairs. But anyway, you didn't come from a place of privilege or money. You made it happen for yourself, and it took time. It took time, but I think bit by bit you worked your way up. I think you moved up a whole class level. I mean, a whole different tax bracket. And I feel like it was from your talent, your raw talent and your work ethic and your patience, a combination of those things. But you did it. And I think a lot of people watched your progress. A lot of people tried to copy you, tried to emulate you, and tried to get a little piece of what you had. There may have been copycats, people who, tried to replicate your success but never quite made it. I think when you eventually got to your highest level of achievement, when you finally made it, you had that breakthrough, I think you were almost someone who had a lot of patrons. You had a lot of people in high places noticing your work, appreciating your work, and recognizing that your work was the best of the best, a cut above the rest. And I think that you broke a family pattern, or you broke a generational pattern of financial scarcity. You showed other people in your family this is what is possible. You may have broken a chain of poverty in your family. And again, you did it through writing. So something involving communication, something involving the written word. You are a person, I'm hearing of letters, that keeps coming through, that phrase, a person of letters. And yeah, I think it's not only that you were a talented writer or novelist or speaker. It wasn't just that you, maybe for some of you, you did something with history too, like a historian. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that you had a skill for writing. You also were gifted with your words in general. You were a good speaker, a good networker. So not only were you able to, let's say you were a novelist, not only did you write a novel, but then you were able to network, and you had this social charisma and the social skill set, the charm. You were good with your words. You were a smooth talker. You could promote your work. You could network. And you had to move like that because you didn't have it handed to you. You were self-made. And you were succeeding in a field where there was tough competition and where other people maybe did have a privilege. Maybe they did have a leg up. Maybe they came from a family of publishers, like a publishing company. Or maybe they came from a family with a lot of money and a lot of connections to the literary world. If we go back to that author example, if you had money and you came from money, you could be chilling, on a yacht in Europe, living your best life, writing your first novel at your leisurely time. Versus if you don't come from money, you gotta work and put food on the table and, write your novel in your downtime. It makes a difference. And so, yeah, I don't think that you came from a wealthy background or that you had anything handed to you. You know, I think that you worked for every scrap of success that you got. And you were very successful in your past life, but it was hard earned and it was a journey and it wasn't easy. And you may have not have found success until your later years, you know? Your work may not have been appreciated or recognized or given the appropriate platform until you were older, because it was a journey. But again, it was your talent and your patience and your tenacity and your resiliency that made it happen, your work ethic. And you believed in yourself. You know, with the rooster, like you had the self-confidence. You believed, I can make this happen for myself. You know, other people in your family may have told you that's not realistic. That's a pipe dream. You're never going to make it. But your past life self said, you know what? I'm going to die trying. But thankfully you died successful. But you know, you had that kind of tenacity. If you're going to believe in anything, choose to believe in yourself. That's what your past life is saying. They're like, choose to believe in you. No one else is ever going to believe in you the way that you can believe in yourself. If you're going to bet on anything, if you're going to take a gamble on anything in your life, let it be on your own talents. It's reminding me of Stephen King. He said something about, I'm just living by my wits. And he has made a fortune by his wits, by his own mind, by the things he creates in his mind and writes down on paper. He has made a fortune from that, from telling stories. You are making a fortune from nothing, from your own wits, your own imagination, pen to paper. We are writing our story. We are writing our own fortune. We are writing our own fate. I mean, you are a gifted writer, a gifted oral communicator. And some of you, you know, maybe it wasn't novels, maybe you were into poetry, maybe you wrote poems, maybe you wrote songs, maybe you wrote plays, but you wrote something. Maybe you wrote historical texts, I don't know, but you wrote something. And you were not only good with the written word, but also good with the spoken word. You knew how to self-promote. I think before self-promotion was even a thing, you were out there self-promoting. And you created your own abundance, and you broke that generational pattern of poverty, of financial scarcity, of insecurity, of dreaming small. And I think one of the best things for you towards the end of your life was being able to have more than enough money to be able to give back. Whether it was to give to your family, give to your loved ones, give to your children. Maybe you wanted to leave behind an inheritance for your family. You wanted to create generational wealth. Maybe you wanted to leave behind a legacy with your name. You wanted to have enough money to donate to a charity that you cared about, a cause that you cared about. Maybe you donated to certain political things, political funds that you believed in at the time. But there's this idea of your life being the blueprint for others after you and your family to succeed. Even if you didn't have children, like your nephews, your nieces, aunt or uncle so-and-so did it, so I can do it too. You know, you were the underdog. You were the horse nobody bet on, but you won anyway. And you had to take some chances. You had to take some risks. With the Four of Pentacles, he has to set down those, you know, a few of those pentacles to open up the door of opportunity. It was a risk, it was a gamble, but you bet on yourself and it paid off. You believed in yourself when nobody else did. And you see the little turtle on the Four of Pentacles? You didn't care that you didn't get overnight success. You didn't care if there were obstacles or challenges along the way. You may have felt sad or upset or defeated in the moment, but you didn't let that moment define you. You said, this is a moment. I'm going to keep going. And I do think by the end of your life, not only did you have that wealth, but you also had fame. You also had fame. People knew of your work. Like I said, you had patrons, you had fans. People who recognized you as the best of the best. And you may have been someone, I wouldn't be surprised, who ended up penning a memoir, who wrote a biography at the end of their life. You may have also been someone who kept journals or diaries, and those were published after your death. And you know how sometimes when someone famous passes and they uncover manuscripts or rough drafts of whatever their work was, they'll publish it after the person is dead, whoever is in charge of the estate. And I do think you had an estate when you passed, so that could have been a thing as well. So let's say you were a poet and after you died they found a collection of unpublished poems. Whoever ran your estate may have decided to publish those poems after your death. And so even after your death, your work is being loved and adored by so many people, and your words kind of carry on in infamy. I think when you're an artist and you create something like that and people love it and talk about it and love it and talk about it, your life carries on even though you're dead. Like, you have this legacy. There is life after death because what you created lives beyond you and takes on a life of its own. And I think that's really beautiful. One of the most beautiful aspects, I think, of being a creative person and sharing your work with the world. Now, this final message is from your past life self. If they could say something to you now. So your past life version of you, if they could speak to you now, group 1, what would they say? Let's find out. We have soulmates. Meet moon and mirror. They are perfect reflections of each other. They have so much to teach each other and so much to learn. Just as the moon reflects the light of the sun, they reflect each other's light back at each other. They are both emanating and reflecting. Look around. Your friends and family are perfect reflections of you. They are in your dream just as you are in their dream, a perfect paradox. So with each interaction, ask yourself, what do I have to learn from you? What do I have to share with you? What are you teaching me about myself? Remember, we are here to help each other grow. So this card here is telling me, in this incarnation, you're really meant to, I think, for your main soul purpose, you are meant to learn more about love and connection and human relationships. That's what you're meant to learn about. Your past life version of yourself is saying, we already had an incarnation where we did nothing but focus on our career. We made our career our life, and it was a lonely, long, hard journey. But in this lifetime, I want to know what love feels like. And not just romantic love, real friendship, real family. I want to know what that feels like. I want to find my soul family. I want to find my soulmate. I want to feel that. I don't want to live for the fame and the fortune this time. It was nice, but it was a hard road. This time, I want to know what love feels like. And that's not saying your career can't be important in this lifetime, but I feel like your past life self is saying, let's not have that be our only focus this time around. This time around, let's not be totally validated by just success. Let's not let that define us, or let us redefine success, beyond fame and fortune, let us understand the value of love and connection. All right, that concludes your reading. I hope it resonated. I hope it brought you some comfort. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, or subscribing. Hitting the notification bell lets you know whenever I upload. The easiest way to support the channel is to watch the ads. I know they can probably be a little bit annoying, but you can always mute them and just have them on in the background. So I really appreciate anyone who does that as well. I also want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has watched the ads already, been a regular viewer, donated on Venmo, tipped with SuperThanks, or just commented or liked a video. It means the world to me and to Miss Gracie, of course. I'm wishing everyone the best as always. Please take care, and I hope to see you in my next reading. Group 2, welcome to your reading. So you all have the Four of Swords, the Nine of Pentacles, the Three of Swords, the Mentor card, passing on wisdom and refining a student's character. We have the Wheel of Fortune, the Weasel and Pine, introspection. We have the Nine of Cups, peach, and we have Femme Fatale, highlights the erotic energy of the feminine, opens your heart when your dependency is rejected. You have a totally different story than group 1, like very radically different. So you grew up in a family that, in your past life, you grew up in a family that was very well known in its community, that was highly respected. You know, if you think about, if you watch like Bridgerton, how there are like certain families that are the elites, you know, it's sort of like that. Like you came from a family that had a lot of pull, that had a lot of power, that had a lot of wealth, that had a lot of resources, that was really well known, and that was thought of as like a good family, whatever that means. And so, you know, you guys were high class. And so with that came luxury, came a lot of privilege, but it also came with this sort of idea of we have to protect and maintain the family name. And so there were a lot of expectations placed upon you as to how you were supposed to act, how you were supposed to dress, etiquette, what was expected of you in terms of your education, how you should be, who you should marry, what you know, basically every aspect of your life. Your family had a path that they imagined for you, and your parents made a lot of decisions for you. And I think, you know, on one hand, you had a very cushy privileged, rich life where you wanted for nothing. You know, you had all of the material things you could ever want. But then on the other side of that, and I will say there was also a lot of love in your family. I do think you loved your family. I think that I'm getting a little bit off. I'm sorry, there's a lot of messages coming through. You have a lot to say about your past life. Because it's like, well, wait. And, you know, it's like they want you to understand that even with all of those pressures your family placed upon you, you still loved them very dearly. You still, even if a part of you rebelled sometimes, you still had this feeling of, I want to make them proud. I want to make them happy. I want to live up to the family name. And there was a lot of love between you and your siblings. Even if there was sometimes competition, there was still love there. And I don't think that you were the eldest. I do think maybe you were like the middle child. You know, you weren't the youngest and you weren't the eldest. So you didn't have as many expectations placed upon you as your eldest sibling, but you didn't get away with as much as the youngest. You know, you were somewhere in the middle. And yeah, I feel like you guys had a pretty traditional household with, like, your father was the head of the household, you know, and your mother was the homemaker. But honestly, I feel like you all would have had like staff, you know, you would have had a housekeeper, a groundskeeper, a driver, you know, things like that. I think, you know, your mom being the homemaker, like, she had a lot of help. You know, she was a privileged lady, let's say that. And so I feel like, you know, in some ways you struggled, because as much as you loved your family and as much as you wanted to make them proud, you just couldn't do what they wanted you to do. And I think where the point of tension came was your love life. With the 9 of Cups here, it was your love life. You wanted to be able to find your own true love. You wanted to be able to live a life that you loved, and you wanted to be able to love your life on your own terms, and you didn't want to follow the path. I think you were willing to make some concessions, but I think it just got to a point to where they were asking too much of you. With the Wheel of Fortune, there was a breaking point. You know, it was a buildup of tension over the years, but there was just a moment where they asked too much of you. And you were like, I've conceded so much, I can't. So maybe you got a marriage proposal from someone and your family was like, this is who you're going to marry, and you said no. I could see it being something like that. But it was some kind of event that just forced your hand. There was some sort of fated thing that happened where you said, with the introspection card here, I can't do it. I can't make this many sacrifices for my family. I've already sacrificed so much of who I am. I can't be the daughter or the son that you want me to be. I can't do it. I tried. And again, it was painful because you loved your family. You loved them. But you felt like that love was conditional on their part. You felt like you had to act out this role. You had to be someone that you weren't. And it just didn't feel right to you. It didn't feel true to you. You remember in the Disney movie when Pocahontas would run off into the woods and she would speak to, was it Mother Willow? Is the willow tree the grandmother? It's been a really long time since I watched Pocahontas. So bear with me. But that's what this mentor card is making me think of. Maybe there was someone that you could run to and escape to and tell all your problems to. Someone that you confided in and you sought comfort and safety in them. But I think it was around the time when you started to reach maturity, come into young adulthood, when this break happened, and you did separate from your family, and it broke your heart. It broke your heart. You missed them terribly. You gave up all the wealth, all the riches, all of the privilege. And as much as that hurt, what hurt worse was losing that connection to your family because you love them so much. But you chose a different path. And you chose to be able to dress how you wanted to dress, to love who you wanted to love, to live a lifestyle that was more conducive to your happiness. And you did have a guide, you did have help. Someone in your life helped you through that process. There was some kind of mentor there. And eventually you became this femme fatale. I mean, eventually you stepped into this role. And I think that makes a lot of sense because there may have been this fear around long-term romantic commitment because your family broke your heart. And so maybe you had this mindset of, if you can't even rely upon family, who can you rely upon? So that maybe turned you against the idea of marriage, the idea of starting a family, the idea of building a life with someone, because you felt like, if my own family could abandon me, if my own family could shun me because I couldn't follow their narrow path, then how can I trust anyone else not to abandon me? So I think that created a fear of abandonment. It created this feeling of rootlessness, this feeling of I don't have a home, this feeling of I'm here for a fun time, a good time, not for a long time. And so I think you started living just for pleasure, just for immediate gratification, because you didn't trust that happiness, love could stay because of that fear of abandonment. So I think after that, you did live a bit of a lonely life. It was wild and it was fun and it was adventurous, and you traveled and you saw so much beyond your family's narrow way of being. You saw so much out of the confines of your hometown. You experienced art and culture and all of the, I'm hearing, greatest pleasures that life has to offer. But you experienced it all for a short time. I'm hearing like you lived hard. So I'm thinking you probably indulged a lot. You were probably really free and wild and in the moment. And when you live like that, impulsively, doing things from a place of instant gratification, indulging in substances, indulging in food, indulging in physical pleasure, all of that kind of stuff, eventually it's going to take its toll. Living that recklessly for the moment, for the fun. Anything to temporarily numb that heartbreak of that separation from your family. And so I think ultimately here, it wasn't a long incarnation. I will say that. I don't think you lived until, I don't think you made it to an old age. I think you were like an early Lana Del Rey song, where she romanticized like dying young. I think that's what it was. I think that your family broke your heart, you felt abandoned, and you packed as much fun and frivol, how do you say it? Frivolous? Not frivolous, but I can spell it, I can't say it. You lived a lavish, frivolous lifestyle. You were a Rolling Stone on a budget, like I think you lived a wild life that didn't really match up with your financial situation either. You know, I felt like maybe you dined in the nicest of restaurants based upon your charisma. You know, I feel like you were able to merge yourself in different social circles. You were able to, because you came from money, so you knew that world. And so I think you were out here looking expensive without having a dime to your name. You know, you were kind of like couch surfing your whole life, relying upon the kindness of strangers, going from relationship to relationship, just to kind of financially fund this lavish lifestyle. But I think it was always slipping through your fingers. You had that fear of abandonment. You couldn't stay. You were always moving on to the next. So I think you had a colorful, wild life that looked so enticing to people on the outside, but to you, never really felt that fulfilling. You know, it was like your life was like constant junk food, like sugary food. Like it feels good in the moment, you get that sugar rush, but then afterwards you have a stomach ache. That's what it felt like. That's what your life was like. I hope I'm describing this accurately. And so in this incarnation, maybe you too have issues with your family. Maybe you have separation from your family. Maybe you have a fear of abandonment. Maybe you've carried that over from your past life. But I think in this lifetime, you are meant to know stability. You are meant to have an easy, gentle, long life. Because this life was a wild ride. It was a roller coaster of a life. And it feels like your soul is tired. And it's like, I can't live like that again. I can't be a Rolling Stone again. I can't do it. If you guys remember Lana Del Rey's Ride music video, that music video is kind of like what your past life was like. That whole thing. Also, what was that song? Off to the Races. That song too. Go listen to those songs or watch that Ride music video to get an idea of what your past life was like. Because it was a wild ride. And you probably would have been a muse. I wouldn't be surprised if you were a muse to different artists of that time. Because I do feel like you probably hung out with a lot of creative types. I could see you moving in those circles in like the art world. 100%. So there's probably some songs out there about you. so maybe some poems, a novel or two. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And I think you were a heartbreaker. I think you broke a lot of hearts in your day. Really and truly, because you wouldn't stay. You know, even when you had a good setup and someone was financially taking care of you, you just wouldn't stay. You know, you had this like wild, reckless heart, this mindset of, if I don't leave first, I'm gonna get left. So you just kept leaving. And with Femme Fatale, I will say, like, maybe in some ways you use your physical appearance, you know, maybe you were a bit promiscuous. Maybe you kind of used your physical attractiveness to get what you wanted in certain situations. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I think you used your charm, your attractiveness to kind of get by in life, you know, and to continue to live this life of luxury that you no longer really had. You know, your bank account was empty. You didn't have any money in your pockets. Isn't it a Kanye song where it's like, oh God, what's that line? Designer bag or $10,000 bag, but no money in your wallet or something like that it goes. You know, like you would have been carrying around, you know, like a beautiful purse or had like on a lavish coat, beautiful clothes, but you had no money, like at all. I could see it being that kind of thing. And now to wrap up your reading here, we have a spirit cat message that is a message from your past life self. So if your past life self could say something to you now, this version of yourself, what would they say? We have relaxation. Meet Molly like a cloud. She is the embodiment of that luscious state between purring and sleep. Molly understands the healing magic of stretching her paws, arching her back, and letting out a long mew, and then settling into a cozy circle of softness and rest. For a moment or maybe longer, let go of everything you feel you have to do, and consciously relax your body and mind. Slow down your breath, savor the stillness between each inhale and exhale. Close your eyes, unwind, soften. You deserve the gentle healing of relaxation. Your past life self wants you to take it easy. Again, like you lived a rough, fun, but fast kind of life before. And I think in this incarnation, it's meant to be slower, it's meant to be gentler, it's meant to be easy. Maybe in some ways it's meant to be more traditional. But you are meant to have stability. You are meant to have sanctuary. You are meant to have easiness to your life. It's not meant to be so hard. And in this life, I think you're meant to live a long life. Is it maybe in some ways more boring or more dull? Yeah, but it's also more comforting and safer and easier. And yeah, maybe more predictable, but predictability lends itself to stability and roots and home and family, which can all be really beautiful. So maybe you give up a little bit of adventure in this lifetime, but it's because you're meant to have stability. You've had enough adventure. Your past self is saying, trust me, we had enough adventures in our past life to last us many lifetimes. This time, please find home. Please find stability. Please find sanctuary. Please find a place of rest, of stillness. Don't have a restless heart. Don't be afraid of everyone you love leaving you. So much that you leave them. Don't do it. Don't make my mistakes again. We're smarter this time. That's the message. All right, that concludes your reading. I hope it resonated. I hope it brought you some comfort. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, or subscribing. Hitting the notification bell lets you know whenever I upload. The easiest way to support the channel is to watch the ads. I know they can probably be a little bit annoying, but you can always mute them and just have them on in the background. So I really appreciate anyone who does that as well. I also want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has watched the ads already, been a regular viewer, donated on Venmo, tipped with SuperThanks, or just commented or liked a video. It means the world to me and to Miss Gracie, of course. I'm wishing everyone the best as always. Please take care, and I hope to see you in my next reading. Hi group 3, welcome to your reading. So we have the nature card here, which is the devil card in the Green Witch Tarot. We have the Ace of Wands, we have the Three of Wands, we have Avenger, desire to balance the scales of justice, righteousness on behalf of society or oneself. We have the Snail and Huckleberry, trust in the invisible. We have Five of Earth or the Five of Pentacles, Slippery Elm, and we have Awakening, which is Judgment in the Herbcrafter's Tarot deck. And I think that's pronounced Tulsi. I could be wrong though. Group 3, you were an interesting character in your past life. You were really interesting. I feel like you gave Robin Hood energy with the Avenger here. I think you lived by your own moral code. You had a strict idea of what was right versus what was wrong. It wasn't always the popular opinion. You didn't follow anyone else's rules or guidebook, but you lived by your own code. Some people may have considered you, a villain, a bad person, but I feel like you were the anti-hero, or the anti-hero. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but that was your vibe, and I feel like here you lived for the adventure. You were always traveling, you were always on the move. And you never had too much money to your name, but you got by, you scrapped by. And I think that when you did have anything to share, you gave it to people who didn't have a lot. And that's why I said it was the Robin Hood kind of idea of like stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Some people would find that morally questionable, while other people would look at you as a hero. So you're a complicated figure, so I feel like you took what you felt was rightfully yours. And maybe you gave away things that weren't yours to give, but you felt right in taking it. You had this kind of mindset of like, I live in a society where the laws aren't fair. I live in a society that is unjust. So if I follow the rules, if I follow the law, I am agreeing, I am submitting myself to a system that is unfair, that is morally corrupt. So you rebelled against that system. You broke the law all the time. You broke the rules all the time. Not only like legally, like what the laws were, but also just sort of social standards, societal expectations, proper etiquette. You broke all of that. Anything that you felt like was unjust, that wasn't right, that was morally corrupt about society, you pushed back against it. You broke the law. You were a rebel. You did your own thing. And you got by the skin of your teeth, like you were in some close calls with the law. You had people chasing you. You were wanted. There were certain places you couldn't go back to because there was like a warrant out for your arrest. Like you were a wanted, I'm hearing a wanted man. You were a wanted man. People were hunting you down. People wanted revenge on you. People felt like you did them wrong. You had haters, but you also had people who loved you. You were a very polarizing figure. And I feel like you had this like trickster energy. You were very clever, very cunning. And I think sometimes you would get so fixated on these plots that you had, these plans that you had. Like with the devil card here in nature, he's so busy laying out this bear trap, he doesn't see the bears right behind him. So there were times where you were almost too clever for your own good and it got you into trouble. Times when You weren't noticing how dangerous your situation was because you become so accustomed to close calls, dangerous situations. It's like you stopped sensing it because it became your norm. But I think you had faith. I think you were a spiritual person. And I feel like looking at your cards here, you felt very justified in your lifestyle. You felt like morally you were doing the right thing, even though you were breaking all the laws and all the moral codes of the day. You had your own set of rules, your own moral code, your own moral compass. And you refused to comply with society because you felt society was wrong. And you felt like you were answering a higher call of God or the universe, or whatever it was that your past self believed in. You felt like you were answering a higher purpose. You were like, I don't care what the laws are, what the government says, what the king says, whoever. I don't care, because I'm answering the call of a higher power. What is a king to a god? It reminds me also of what's that line? Pregnancy brain is happening. Oh man, what is that song? With I think it's Frank Ocean, Kanye, and Jay-Z. I used to listen to it all the time. Was it Call of the Wild? What's that song? What's a king to a god? What's a god to a non-believer? And you may have had spiritual beliefs that were not the norm. You may have gone totally against the major religion of the day, or wherever, community you came from. You were just out there. Like you were a wild card kind of person. No one knew what to expect of you. And you were so authentically yourself. And I wouldn't be surprised if you were a fire sign in a past life, Leo, Aries, Sagittarius, and you had a temper. Oh man, you had a temper. I think your temper got you into trouble a lot. You had a great sense of humor, you laughed off a lot, but you had a temper. And I think what would tick you off the fastest, what would get under your skin the fastest, was any sort of classism. You hated that. You hated anything that separated people, that you felt was arbitrary. You would have been against any sexism, racism, like anything, or classism, like I said, anything you felt separated people. You hated that. You hated this idea that this person is better than this person because of something arbitrary. Like you just didn't believe in that. You believed that everyone should be on an equal playing field. And so that's why you kind of, like a Robin Hood, like, I'm going to reallocate because this system is unfair. There's no way for people to move up in this system. You want to keep the poor down. You want to keep people down. You want to keep people oppressed. Well, I'm not going to be oppressed. I'm not going to follow your rule book. And so you fought back. And you broke the law. And there were consequences to that kind of lifestyle. You always had to watch your back. You didn't have many friends. You never stayed in one place very long. You didn't have roots. But you saw the world. You traveled. And you were very skilled. You knew how to start a fire, how to hunt, how to fish, how to make tools, how to make clothes. You probably spoke more than one language. You were self-taught in a lot of ways. And it's not saying a lot about your family. I don't know if you were orphaned, or you weren't close to your family, or you left home young, but there's no sense of connection. Like there's no there's just no people traveling with you. You're a lone wolf. You're on your own. And maybe you come back to certain places and you have, old friends here and there. But for you, I feel like, quite honestly, you used people as a means to an end. You were. You were a bit selfish at times. You were looking after your own neck a lot of the times. A lot of the times, like we said, you were in danger. People were after you. You were a thief. But again, I feel like you felt like society is unjust. I have a right to take this. They built their wealth off the backs of the poor. They don't deserve their money anyway. Like, that was your mindset. So you felt justified. And I feel like you were more at home in like the jungle or the wilderness. You were more at home being on the fringe of society. That's where you were happiest, on your own. You were happier when you were out to sea. And I think if you ever did settle down, it was you building some home out in the forest off the grid and living off the land. But you were skilled enough to do that. And it was a hard life. It wasn't an easy one. But you lived your life on your terms. And no one could tell you nothing. Like, you were super stubborn. No one could tell you anything. But that's what made you happy. I feel like you had this wanderlust within you. I feel like more than anything, you wanted to see the world because you weren't happy with where you came from. You grew up hating where you came from. And all you wanted to do was to get away. And whatever it took to get the money to make that happen, and you kept searching and searching and searching. And I feel like you kept encountering the same mess in different forms in different places, because everywhere you went there was some kind of oppression. And I think it made you sick. I think you were someone who probably became a bit of a hermit. The Huckleberry's making me think of Huckleberry Finn. I can barely recall that movie. I haven't probably seen that movie since I was like 5 years old. So if anyone remembers the story of Huckleberry Finn, if it relates to this reading, put it down in the comments. But that just came through. And I wouldn't be surprised if you like spread your philosophy, spread your message through word of mouth. I definitely feel like you were kind of like a legend, because you didn't stay in one place for too long, but people knew of you. Like I said, you were a wanted man. People knew of you. People were after you. People either loved you or hated your guts. Like Puss in Boots. Like Puss in Boots. Okay, that was your vibe. I didn't think Puss in Boots was going to come out today. I also wouldn't be surprised. I will say this. If we look at maybe some of your other past lives, I wouldn't be surprised if you spent at least one incarnation as an animal, because it feels like there's just such a distaste for humanity and how just unfair it can be. How society is structured to keep certain people oppressed. I feel like you're like, this isn't how it is in the animal kingdom. You know what I mean? Like, there's just a distaste for humanity that's coming through here. So I do think maybe in a past life you were a bird, or you were some kind of animal that had a lot of mobility, that maybe would like migrate or something. You weren't, I feel like, someone's domestic pet. I do feel like you were a wild animal. And now to wrap up your reading, we have a spirit cat message from your past life self. So if your past life version of you could say something to this version of you, this incarnation, what would they say? we have imagination. Meet Zed. He might not look like your ordinary house cat, but in fact, he is one. He doesn't come from outer space or from a far-off land. He lives just around the corner. He is the maker of his own kitty-verse. He is constantly recreating himself to mirror the infinite possibilities of his imagination. Today he is purple and green, but tomorrow he might be made of flowers, and the next day he might have stars for eyes. We are all in a constant state of becoming. We don't always have to stick with the familiar A, B, and C. Sometimes we can reach for Z. This is very on brand for your past life self. Like, it's so on the nose. Like, imagination, especially with you getting the Ace of Wands. And even with the purple and green here, we see that actually in your cards. So I like that repeating color story and that little synchronicity there. But your past life version, I mean, he would have been someone who probably wore a lot of different identities, right? That was probably like a chameleon, just from a place of survival. Like, if you're wanted, if you've broken the law, if you ticked off some people, you know, like we talked about, you having your fair share of haters, right? Like, you've gone against the grain, you're a rebel. You probably do have to wear disguises and reinvent yourself and assume new identities and false names and things like that, and get really creative to get yourself out of certain binds, right? Tight spots. And so your past life version is saying, we have done this in a very extreme way in the past. You know, like, we are the king of reinvention, right? You can apply that to your life now, okay? So if you don't like something about who you are, if you feel like who you are, how you're showing up in your life doesn't really resonate with who you truly are inside, you can reinvent yourself. You know how many times we've reinvented ourselves when we were living our past life out of survival? You already know how to do this. So do it now in this lifetime. Dream bigger. Imagine better for yourself. Create something new. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to evolve. Don't be afraid to grow. You don't have to stay in your comfort zone. We were travelers. We were adventurers. We were rebels. We were our own individual. We lived our life on our terms, and we didn't care who thought whatever about it. We broke all the rules. And so in this lifetime, you can use aspects of that. You can use that creativity to change anything about yourself that you feel like doesn't resonate with who you truly are inside. You can reimagine, recreate your life and yourself to resonate with who you truly are. And you can grow and you can evolve and you can change. You don't have to stay the same. And don't feel like you have to keep yourself small to please anybody else. You know, because sometimes people don't want us to change. They want us to stay the same. And your past life version is saying you weren't meant to be one way your whole life. You're meant to grow. You're meant to evolve. Don't keep yourself stuck. Don't keep yourself small to keep other people comfortable. Your past life self is saying you can be a little selfish when it comes to your self-expression, when it comes to making those big life decisions for yourself. This is your life. Take ownership of it. All right, that concludes your reading. I hope it resonated. I hope it brought you some comfort. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, or subscribing. Hitting the notification bell lets you know whenever I upload. The easiest way to support the channel is to watch the ads. I know they can probably be a little bit annoying, but you can always mute them and just have them on in the background. So I really appreciate anyone who does that as well. I also want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has watched the ads already, been a regular viewer, donated on Venmo, tipped with SuperThanks, or just commented or liked a video. It means the world to me and to Miss Gracie, of course. I'm wishing everyone the best as always. Please take care, and I hope to see you in my next reading.